evening and welcome to Morning Movie News, where first off today we're going to talk about Tiffany Haddish. But wait a minute, isn't Tiffany Haddish in the news like every day? Why talk about her today in particular? Well, the starting point of our discussion is that she just landed a very prestigious gig. She's going to host the MTV Movie TV Awards. They're like the Golden Globes now, remember. This is the second year they'll be doing that. But she'll be doing that this June. And that is a big deal gig for any comedian, but particularly for Haddish, because she is the first black woman ever to host the show. So I want to talk about the barriers that Haddish is breaking down in Hollywood for black women, but also how she is an excellent example of a long-time industry technique that's used to build careers and how it's a backup technique. It's not the ideal technique, but it's one that's very viable, and Haddish is a great example of it. And the very fact that she has to use it, well, that her representation team has to use it, also underscores the problem that black women have in Hollywood. So let's start there. Yes, black women in Hollywood have a difficult time. Viola Davis, Octavia Spencer, Taraji P. Henson have all spoken about this. And I think for all the advancements, it's important to remember that women are making, and the black community is making in Hollywood, black women not so much. I think that's beginning to change. I think that's one of the things that people like about Black Panther. It spotlights some wonderful black actresses. But as I said in my review, I feel they're a little bit support staff. And the nice thing about Tiffany Haddish is that she is the Black Panther of all her own projects. She's front and center. So I'm very happy about that. I think what she's doing is important because not only is she hosting the first black woman to ever host the MTV Movie and TV Awards, but also, you'll recall that recently she was the first female black stand-up comedian to ever host Saturday Night Live. And she not only hosted, but she was able to deliver ratings. And I hope the same holds true for her MTV gig. That will only help her in the long run and get her out of the strategies she's stuck using right now. Now, you might have noticed that it seems like Tiffany Haddish doesn't say no to anything that's offered to her. Although I have to say, the Groupon spokesmanship gig, she should not have turned that down under any circumstances. There's probably so much money attached to that, you just don't turn stuff like that down unless you're like Leonardo DiCaprio. Now, the reason I bring up Leonardo DiCaprio is that after Girls Trip, when Tiffany Haddish was like a really big deal, she was going around and she was like, I would love to be in a movie with Leonardo DiCaprio. And I think part of it was to be funny, because she's a stand-up comedian. And I think part of it was genuine, because who wouldn't want to be in a movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, right? And obviously she not only didn't get that, but not anything close to that. In fact, almost all of her upcoming projects come from still the black filmmaking community. And that's unfortunate, but somebody has to, she has to get work from somewhere, and thankfully somebody stepped up, even if it once again is just the black filmmaking community. She has one project I would have said no to, and that's a TV show on TBS with Tracy Morgan. That doesn't seem like someone who's a hot up-and-comer, that kind of gig. I hope it doesn't torpedo this whole thing. But so anyway, without any huge, let's say, upper-tier gigs on the horizon, her management team decided to do this backup technique of having her say she would take any opportunity that was offered to her. And this is the strategy behind it. You put yourself so you're everywhere, and everyone, you can't, there's nowhere you can turn and you don't see Tiffany Haddish, right? And the idea is to make it seem like she's, she continues to be a hot commodity after Girls Trip. The worst thing that could have happened to her would be to disappear entirely, right? So since Hollywood loves a sure thing, they like something that's hot at the moment because they don't like to take risks. I'm sure the people at MTV were like, wow, Tiffany Haddish is everywhere. Maybe she should host the MTV Movie and Television Awards. And that's how stuff like that works. Also, she took the Oscar nominee presenting gig, very unorthodox presentation alongside Andy Serkis. Some people liked it, some people didn't, but it got her a lot of attention. I'm sure contributed to getting this MTV gig, and she'll be a presenter now at the Oscars. So you just want to keep your momentum going. And since, again, she's not getting the more high caliber projects, she's going for, instead of quality, she's going for quantity. And so that's the alternate method. Now, the scary thing here is that you could oversaturate yourself before you are able to level up. That happened, for instance, recently to Mark Wahlberg. He oversaturated himself, and now I think he also, by the way, has a person position for like a, I think like a cable TV, like DirecTV or something. He's very good at it. I'm sure he made a lot of money off of it. He was the highest paid actor last year, in fact. But if you're not careful, you hit a wall. I think Dwayne Johnson almost hit a wall if it weren't for Jumanji, also someone in danger of being oversaturated. But Tiffany Haddish really had no choice here because, again, she wasn't being offered a quality. Well, I think I don't want to be derogatory of projects she does have coming up, but not something of a higher level. So I think that she's doing exactly what she needs to do. And I think this MTV thing is a very good development. This is a prestige gig. Although I will point out that Rebel Wilson had the gig a few years prior. She was very hot for a while, but she also seemed to be everywhere, right? But she wasn't able to turn that into anything. She hit a wall of overexposure. She also had some other difficulties, legal difficulties, but still, things just didn't pan out. And so I hope that Tiffany Haddish is able to succeed where Rebel Wilson could not. But I'm curious, what do you think of this technique? Do you like seeing Tiffany Haddish everywhere? How close do you think she is to being overexposed? Do you think she can parlay this into like a more solid career? Because again, this is a short-term strategy. And also, what do you think? Do you think she's getting the proper recognition for the barriers that she is breaking down? All right, so that's the first story of the day. Now, the second story of the day is that, even though it's harder for a black woman in Hollywood, it's not easy for anyone in Hollywood. And so that's why we're going to talk about Mark Hamill, who's had a difficult career, but he's been very smart in his ability to reinvent himself. And he also, to be fair, he's not the greatest actor, right? I mean, I think he's a very game actor, and I think he's a better voice actor. Like the Joker obviously was a huge godsend to him. I mean, he does a great job with it, but a lot of acting is luck and being at the right place in the right time. And Tim Curry, luckily, couldn't do the Joker after all, and so Mark Hamill was able to, for Batman the Animated Series, Tim Curry was first cast, so Mark Hamill was able to take that opportunity and really run with it. But as he recently admitted, he is now unemployed after The Last Jedi. So he really, and this is also why it's important for talent to be on social media, not only because they can promote their projects, and that's something that's taken into account now when casting, but also because he was able to get in there when a fan suggested to James Gunn that Mark Hamill would be a great addition to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And James Gunn said, "Oh yeah, I'd love to talk to him. I believe we're neighbors. We should have coffee and discuss it." And Mark Hamill said, "I'd love to, as your neighbor and also as an unemployed actor." And James Gunn, it looks like they are going to sit down and actually have that discussion. And so I thought that was great. I think that it was all handled very professionally by all parties involved. I think they kept like a fun, relatable factor to it. But I think, it still seemed very much like it was a good idea. I think that, you don't want a fan idea because a fan suggested it to seem too much of a fan service. But I think not only did Gunn and Hamill handle it well, but I think it is just a really good idea. I think Mark Hamill, it would keep him with Disney after his work with Star Wars. I think that he really does fit with the Guardians of the Galaxy vibe. I think his Star Wars background could be hilarious. I think Peter Quill is an interesting match a little bit between Han Solo and Luke Skywalker. He has a little bit of Luke Skywalker's whininess, and he's looking for a new father figure after the last two. Unfortunately, didn't work out for different reasons. So I think that obviously Adam Warlock will be a big part of the third film. But I think they could definitely find something for Mark Hamill to do, and I think it's a really good idea. So what do you think of Mark Hamill being in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, potentially? What do you think of how it was handled online? And what do you think of Mark Hamill admitting, "I'm unemployed right now"? All right, so then speaking of, this is I guess we have a little bit of a theme going here today after all. Recently, one of you asked me on Twitter, what's the next demographic that will get a big break in Hollywood after women with Wonder Woman and the black community with Black Panther? Well, I at first had said maybe, Asia, because of how strong the Asian box office is. But you know what? I'm starting to think it might be the Middle East, which would be fabulous because right now most of the roles available to actors of Middle Eastern descent or from the Middle East are terrorist roles in Hollywood. And I think that that's unfortunate, not only because that's not creatively fulfilling, right? That's really limited in what that group can contribute to entertainment, but also entertainment does a lot to change opinions, people's opinions of groups that they're maybe not familiar with. I think it's very important. Like for instance, I think the entertainment industry did a lot to prep America for the idea of a black president with Barack Obama. It's a small thing. I think I don't want to take anything away from Barack Obama's tremendous achievement, but I think that was definitely a factor. So I think it would be wonderful and very helpful to the global community getting along to have Middle Eastern actors playing actual characters. Now, of course, there's Disney's Aladdin coming up, the live-action Aladdin. I'm very excited about that. But Netflix is going to be doing a lot of work in this area, which I think is very interesting. Now, they're not doing it to help the world, but because Netflix feels they can make a significant amount of money in the Middle East and that general overall region in two areas. Well, first off, they're going to be doing their first show in Arabic called Jinn. I believe that's a genie. And it's going to focus on some modern Arabic teens who come across a jinn and have to stop him from destroying the world. And they really say that their focus here, not only to make a great show, but to portray modern Arabic teens, something that they don't feel that is really in, popular culture right now. And I think that's fabulous. And then also talking, Reed Hastings, the head of Netflix, has said that they feel their next 100 million subscribers are going to come from India, because India is really exponentially increasing the internet access there. And so, of course, Netflix would like to be part of your internet usage. And so you're not going to get people in India to sign on if you can't woo them with content, original content in particular. So look for them to start aggressively putting out original content for that region, India and beyond. And that could potentially be a crossover hit in the rest of the world, just like Germany's Dark found an audience on Netflix. So I think this is very exciting, and that could potentially be the next group for Hollywood to spotlight. I think it's fabulous. Let's see how Aladdin does, and let's see how much. And if Netflix makes a lot of money there, you can bet the other streaming services will become very interested as well. And come to think of it, Shazam is really whitewashing a lot of Middle Eastern roles there. And I'll be curious, especially Black Adam having Dwayne Johnson playing the role, and I hope that I don't know if it'll come back to bite them in the butt. Maybe it should. There are a lot of really great, for instance, Iranian actors who have been showcased in, Best Picture winner, Best Foreign Film winners and contenders over the past few years, and I would have loved to have seen them get that opportunity. All right, so those are the three stories of the day, and I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on them. Now, the viewer question comes from Jurassic Godzilla, who says, Dear Grace, so the other day, Universal announced the release date for Jurassic World 3, June 11th, 2021. My question is, do you believe they announced the third film to the trilogy too early? What if this is another way for them to increase our hype for Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom? How would you explain that move of announcing the release date of the third movie even before Jurassic World 2 hits theaters? Yes, it's very early. Usually you would announce a third film maybe the week or couple weeks before the film's release. This is late June the movie comes out, but now it does seem insanely early. My feeling is, we've discussed this before, often Hollywood will say they're going to make another movie in a franchise right before the next one comes out to make you feel like it's inevitable that the next one is coming out, so you might as well keep up with the story. And that's why sometimes they'll say they're making another movie, and they don't. Remember, right before the last Fantastic Four movie came out, they said, oh, we're making Fantastic Four too, and of course, that's never going to happen. So I think with Jurassic World, they might be sweating a little bit over at Universal. And I think they should. We talked about on Movie Math how much, really, being reminded as we see Black Panther get to the charts, the box office charts, that Jurassic World is up there. So there is a huge audience out there. And maybe they're hiding. Maybe, as I said in Movie Math, Black Panther didn't get a lot of YouTube trailer views. So maybe this, and it still has a huge audience. So maybe Jurassic World will too. But you know what? It's not looking so good right now. Not only was there a lackluster response to the very first teaser trailer, but they had a Super Bowl spot, which I think was got the least amount of attention of all the spots that came out for the big game. And that's not so good. So I think they are nervous, and so I think they're trying to just keep I think there's no talk about Jurassic World, really. And so I think announcing the third film was just a way to keep it in conversation. And that disappeared pretty quickly, although, so I don't really know how effective that was. And I don't think they got enough bang for their buck out of that announcement, and they should have held it for closer to the release date. I'm starting to think that J.A. Bayona was not a good choice for this film. I think that he's not commercial enough, potentially. And I think he really changed the color palette way too much. I think that all the Jurassic movies, the successful ones, have been bright and shiny, and he has gone for a darker, more shadowy tone, and I don't know if that's going to be effective. We'll see, though. But yeah, it's not clicking so far. So I'm curious, what do you think of them does announcing a third film affect how you feel about seeing the second? And how do you feel? Are you planning to see? I mean, for all of us who are cinephiles, we're going to go and see it. But I'm curious, for those of you who don't see every big movie that comes out, are you planning to see Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom in theaters? All right, so that's today's morning movie news. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories, Jurassic Godzilla's viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and of course, any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.